Rain lashed against the windows like 1,000 tiny fists, each drop echoing the chaos in Elena Carter's mind. She had just finished another exhausting 12-hour shift at the design firm, the one she'd been holding together since rumors of a mysterious new CEO began swirling around. Her blouse clung to her back, her laptop bag felt heavier than usual, and the only thing she wanted was the quiet hum of her small suburban home. She kicked off her heels, sighed, and murmured, "Just one night without surprises, please." But life had other plans. A knock came at her door. Frantic, uneven, desperate. Elena froze. It was past midnight, and this neighborhood rarely saw visitors after dark. She hesitated, listening through the wind's howl. Then came a small voice, trembling. "Daddy, I'm cold." Her heart clenched. Without thinking twice, she pulled open the door. There stood a man, drenched, breathless, clutching a little girl in his arms. His clothes were soaked through, his jaw tight with exhaustion, and his eyes. They carried a strange mix of pride and apology. "I'm sorry," he said, voice hoarse. "Our car broke down near the intersection. No hotels would take us. They're all full because of the storm. We just need a place to stay for the night." Elena's instincts warred with reason. She didn't know him. But the child, barely 7, maybe 8, was shivering under a pink blanket that looked more like a towel. The man was careful, standing a respectful distance from her doorstep, shielding his daughter from the rain. For a moment, lightning flashed, illuminating his face. Handsome, yes, but lined with fatigue and something deeper. Grief, maybe. The girl's lips trembled as she whispered, "Please, miss." Elena sighed. "All right, come in before you both freeze." The man exhaled, relief softening his posture. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means." She ushered them into the small living room, tossing him a towel from the hallway closet. "I'm Elena, you?" He hesitated a beat, as if weighing whether to answer honestly. Then, Daniel, and this is my daughter, Lily." Lily managed a faint smile before curling up on the couch. Elena fetched her a warm blanket and a cup of hot chocolate. The girl's tiny hands wrapped around the mug, and for the first time that night, she stopped shivering. Daniel watched silently, gratitude flickering in his tired eyes. He seemed educated, polite, but there was something guarded about him, like a man used to hiding behind control. "You can stay here tonight," Elena said softly. "There's a guest room down the hall. The storm should clear by morning. Are you sure? I don't want to intrude." "You already are," she teased lightly, "but it's fine." For the first time, he chuckled, low and weary. "Thank you. I owe you one." As she turned to leave them to rest, Elena's phone buzzed, a company-wide email alerting all employees. "Important announcement. New CEO to visit headquarters tomorrow morning." "Be prepared," she groaned. Perfect timing. She didn't notice Daniel glance at her screen, his jaw tightening slightly, as if he already knew something she didn't. Outside, thunder rolled again. Inside, 2 strangers shared shelter from a storm neither knew would change their lives forever. Elena dimmed the lights and whispered to herself, "Just one night." But in that silence, Daniel looked at his sleeping daughter and murmured, "Tomorrow, everything changes." To be continued in part 2, where secrets begin to surface, and Elena learns who really stood at her door that night. The storm had passed by morning, leaving behind a faint mist that wrapped the neighborhood in silver light. Elena woke to the soft aroma of coffee wafting through her small kitchen, something that shouldn't have been possible since she lived alone. She slipped on her robe and padded out quietly, only to stop mid-step. Daniel stood there, sleeves rolled up, making breakfast like he belonged. The morning sun caught the faint streaks of gray in his dark hair as he poured milk into 2 mugs. Little Lily sat at the counter swinging her legs, a bright smile replacing the shyness from last night. "Good morning," Elena said cautiously. Trying not to sound startled, Daniel turned, a sheepish grin tugging at his lips. I found your coffee machine. I figured the least I could do is make breakfast after crashing your place." She raised an eyebrow, but couldn't hide her amusement. "You cook too?" "That's dangerous. You're setting the bar too high for house guests." He chuckled, handing her a cup. "Consider it a thank you." As they ate, Lily chatted animatedly about her favorite cartoons and how Daddy says pancakes fix everything. Her innocence was disarming, and Elena felt her heart soften with each laugh. But beneath the warmth of that morning glow, something about Daniel nagged at her. The way he watched the clock, the subtle tension in his jaw, like he was preparing for something big. When she mentioned she worked at Lyra Designs, Daniel's expression shifted for just a heartbeat, a flicker of recognition and hesitation that she couldn't quite read. "You work there?" he asked, tone deceptively casual. "Yes," she said, buttering her toast. "Mid-level design manager. The company's been a bit tense lately. Rumor is we're getting a new CEO. People say he's ruthless, doesn't tolerate mistakes." Daniel's eyes darkened for a moment, but he quickly masked it with a nod. "Ruthless, huh? Maybe he's just misunderstood. Or maybe he's another corporate shark in a suit," Elena replied with a shrug. "Anyway, I'm sure he won't even notice someone like me." Daniel said nothing, just sipped his coffee. By 8:30, he had packed up, his demeanor polite but distant again. "Thank you, Elena, for last night. You didn't have to help us, but you did," she smiled. "Just pay it forward someday." "I will," he promised, his gaze steady, almost solemn. "And I hope we meet again under better circumstances." As his car pulled away, Elena stood on the porch, watching them disappear into the fog. Something in her chest tightened, that strange ache that comes when you sense something important just slipped through your fingers. By 9:15, she was at the office, coffee in hand, pretending everything was normal. But the air buzzed with tension. Everyone was whispering, cleaning their desks, rehearsing smiles. Her friend Nora nudged her. "He's coming today." "The new CEO. Word is he's already in the building." Elena laughed nervously. Oh, great. Another day to feel invisible. And then the elevator doors opened. Every conversation died mid-sentence. The sound of polished shoes echoed across the marble floor. Elena turned. Her cup slipped from her hand, crashing to the floor in slow motion, coffee splattering like spilled ink across the tiles. Because standing at the center of the lobby, in a sharp tailored suit, flanked by board members, was Daniel, the same Daniel she had led into her home, the same man who had promised, "I hope we meet again." Their eyes met, his calm, unreadable, hers wide with disbelief. He gave a faint nod, professional, distant. Then, to the entire room, he said, "Good morning, everyone. I'm Daniel Hayes, your new CEO. To be continued in part 3, where shock turns to humiliation and kindness becomes a complicated secret." For a moment, time froze. The sound of whispers spread like wildfire through the office. Did she just drop her coffee? Why is she staring at him like that? Wait, does she know him? Elena's cheeks burned. She forced herself to move, crouching to pick up the shards of her mug, hoping no one would see her trembling hands. Daniel's voice continued, smooth and commanding. "Lyra Designs has always stood for creativity and integrity. Under my leadership, I intend to restore both." His words drew polite applause, but his gaze, brief, pointed, found her again. It was almost imperceptible, that flicker of familiarity, yet it hit her like a wave. Elena's heart raced. She wanted to vanish. Nora leaned close and whispered, "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I just didn't expect." Elena trailed off, forcing a tight smile. She couldn't exactly say, "He was in my kitchen this morning making pancakes." As Daniel continued his speech, she studied him from the crowd. Gone was the rain-soaked father clutching his daughter. In his place stood a man carved from power, confident, collected, every word deliberate. The board members hung on his sentences. Employees scribbled notes like scripture. When the meeting ended, everyone rushed to greet the new CEO. Elena tried to slip away unnoticed, but fate had other ideas. "Elena Carter," came his voice behind her. Calm, deep, unmistakable. She froze, slowly turned. He stood there alone now, away from the cluster of executives, his expression unreadable. "A word, please?" "Of course, sir." The word "sir" tasted strange in her mouth. They stepped into a quiet corridor. The air between them was charged, half gratitude, half awkward tension. "You didn't tell me you worked here," Daniel began softly. "You didn't tell me you were about to own the place," she replied, trying to sound steady but failing. "I thought you were just a father in trouble." "I was," he said quietly. "Still am." His gaze softened for the briefest second. "I didn't mean to deceive you. I just needed one night where I wasn't the CEO, where I could be Normal. Her chest tightened. You could have said something. And then what? He countered gently. Would you still have let us in? She hesitated. The truth stung. Maybe not. He gave a faint knowing smile. Exactly. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was full, heavy with unsaid things. Finally, he took a step back, his tone professional again. You have my thanks for last night. But from this moment on, we keep that between us. I can't have favoritism rumors spreading? Of course, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You don't have to worry about me. He nodded once, the mask of authority sliding perfectly back into place. Good. I'll see you at the 2 p.m. strategy meeting. As he walked away, Elena stood frozen in the hallway, staring at her reflection in the glass door. It was the same face, same tired eyes, but something had changed. A strange mix of betrayal and curiosity stirred inside her. Later that afternoon, she entered the boardroom, trying to keep her focus on the slides, the discussions, the data. But every time Daniel spoke, her mind wandered back to that rain-soaked night. When the meeting ended, the department head praised her presentation, yet Daniel gave no reaction, no hint of recognition. He didn't look at her once, and somehow that hurt more than any criticism. That night, as she lay in bed, Elena whispered to the darkness, "Why does it bother me this much?" Outside her window, the wind carried faint echoes of the storm that had started it all, to be continued in part 4, where humiliation deepens and Daniel's hidden reasons begin to unravel. The following week felt like walking through a maze of invisible tension. Every time Elena entered a meeting, Daniel was there. The man she'd once handed a towel and coffee, now commanding a room full of people with effortless authority. His presence was magnetic yet distant, as if the storm-lit night they shared belonged to another lifetime. Rumors spread quickly. The new CEO's brutal, someone whispered near the water cooler. He's cutting staff soon. Another added, he barely talks to anyone unless it's about results. Elena tried to focus on her work, burying herself in design sketches and presentation decks. But Daniel's shadow lingered in every corner. She told herself it didn't matter. He'd made it clear. No special treatment, no connection. She was just another employee. Still, a part of her resented how easily he seemed to forget. One afternoon, during a project review, it happened. She had stayed up all night finalizing the pitch for a luxury home design campaign, the same one her team had pinned their hopes on. But as she stood before the board, Daniel interrupted halfway through her presentation. This concept lacks emotional depth, he said sharply, his tone cold and precise. You're showing houses, not homes. The words stung more than they should have. I understand, sir, she replied quietly, though her chest burned. We can adjust the emotional angle. Do it by Friday, he said without looking up. Meeting adjourned. The others filed out silently, casting her sympathetic glances. She stood there alone, her hard work reduced to a few curt words. When she reached the restroom, she locked the door and finally let her composure crack. Her reflection blurred through tears she didn't want to shed. Why did it hurt so much more coming from him? She thought. He wasn't just her boss. He was the man who'd once smiled at her over breakfast, whose daughter she'd tucked in under her blanket. That evening, as she gathered her things, she overheard two junior designers whispering outside the elevator. They say the CEO's got a soft spot for someone in the design team. Elena froze. Yeah, but whoever it is, she's lucky. Imagine being on his radar. Elena stepped into the elevator before they could see her. Her stomach twisted. A rumor like that could destroy her career. The irony was bitter. Daniel was avoiding her to protect her, but his silence had created the very thing he feared. When she returned home, the loneliness of her apartment hit harder than usual. She thought of Lily, her bright eyes, her laughter, the way she'd called her Miss Elena. She missed them both more than she wanted to admit. Then, late that night, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. I hope I didn't hurt you today. I had to be harder on you than I wanted to be. Please understand. She stared at it for a long time, her heart pounding. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard before she typed back, I understand. But it doesn't mean it didn't hurt. 3 dots appeared, then vanished. He didn't reply. The silence that followed was deafening. But across town, in his glass-walled office, Daniel sat alone, staring at the same stormy skyline as before. replaying her words in his mind. He whispered to himself, "You have no idea what I'm trying to protect you from." To be continued in part 5, where the truth behind Daniel's coldness begins to surface, and an unexpected twist changes everything. The days that followed unfolded like a quiet war, unspoken words, sidelong glances, and emotions buried beneath professionalism. Daniel and Elena moved through the same spaces like strangers pretending not to share a past. But behind that facade, both carried the weight of what neither dared to say. Elena threw herself into work, determined to prove she didn't need his approval. Her new pitch was bold, heartfelt, a campaign about rebuilding after loss, about finding home again after storms. When she presented it to the team, the room fell silent. Then came soft applause. Even the toughest critics nodded in respect. Still, Daniel said nothing. He simply dismissed the meeting with his usual restraint. Yet later that evening, when everyone had left, he stood in the empty boardroom, looking at her mock-ups, his hand tracing the line of her designs. The tagline she'd written at the bottom read, "Sometimes shelter finds you." He smiled faintly. She didn't know it, but her words had pierced deeper than she could imagine. That night, the truth he'd been avoiding finally caught up to him. His phone buzzed. A call from a lawyer. "Mr. Hayes, the final details of the company audit are ready. But there's something else. It involves your late wife's trust fund. The internal fraud began months before your takeover. It's linked to Lyra's design division." Daniel's heart sank. "Who?" There was a pause. "A former director. But some of the falsified records are tied to current employee IDs. One of them, Elna Carter." He froze. "That's impossible." "I thought so too," the lawyer continued. "But her signature appears on multiple project authorizations. If she didn't know, someone used her access." Daniel's mind raced. Elena? The woman who opened her home to him, who made his daughter smile. The thought felt wrong, cruelly wrong. Yet the evidence, on paper, was damning. He drove home restless, memories swirling, her laugh, her compassion, her honesty. Could someone like her really be involved in corruption? Or was she another victim of the system he'd vowed to clean up? The next morning, his demeanor was colder than ever. During the staff briefing, he announced an internal audit. "Every account, every authorization, every name," he said firmly. "No exceptions." The entire office buzzed with anxiety. Elena's stomach dropped. She'd done nothing wrong, yet something in Daniel's tone, distant, heavy, made her feel exposed. Later, when she found him alone in his office, she finally confronted him. "You've been avoiding me, punishing me, and now this audit. What's really going on?" Daniel looked up slowly, conflict warring behind his calm expression. "There are things I can't explain yet." Her voice broke. "Then at least tell me why you look at me like I'm someone you can't trust." He stood, walking to the window, hands in his pockets. "Because I don't know if I can." The words hit her like ice. "After everything? After I helped you and Lily?" He turned, eyes pained. "Exactly. Which is why I wish I didn't have to doubt you." Tears welled in her eyes. "You don't know what that feels like." He exhaled sharply. "You're wrong. I know exactly what it feels like. To want to trust someone you shouldn't." For a long moment, silence filled the space between them. Two people standing on opposite sides of the same storm. Finally, she whispered, "Then find out the truth, Daniel." "Because I have nothing to hide." And with that, she walked out, leaving him staring at the door she'd closed. As soon as she left, Daniel sat down, buried his face in his hands, and muttered, "God, please let me be wrong." Across the city, a mysterious figure at a computer terminal smirked, typing one final line of code. A false signature appeared again, E. Carter. To be continued in part 6, where the conspiracy unravels and Daniel's mistake puts everything, including his daughter, in danger. He turned slowly, his face caught between regret and restraint. "After you helped us," Daniel said quietly, "I started seeing you as more than just an employee. That's dangerous, for both of us. I can't afford to be blinded again." "Blinded?" Elena echoed. "By what trust?" "Humanity." His silence was answer enough. She shook her head, tears welling but refusing to fall. "You talk about leadership like it's armor, Daniel. But maybe it's just fear. You're so afraid to feel anything that you hurt people who care." "Elena, no." she cut in, voice trembling. You came to my door in the rain, desperate and lost. I didn't know your name, your title, or your past. I only saw a man who needed help. But now you—" her voice broke. "You can't even look at me without suspicion." Daniel's jaw clenched. "You think I want this? You think I like doubting you? Then stop," she whispered. "Look me in the eyes and tell me I did something wrong." He couldn't. The silence stretched. Raw and heavy, Elena exhaled shakily, straightened her shoulders, and walked out before her composure cracked. That night, she received a call from HR. Her company ID was being suspended pending investigation. Her access had been flagged in the audit. The room spun. Her breath caught in her throat. "There's been a mistake," she insisted, gripping the phone. But the reply was coldly procedural. "Until it's cleared, you're placed on temporary leave." When she hung up, she sank to the floor. For the first time in years, Elena cried without restraint, the kind of tears born from betrayal rather than pain. Across town, Daniel sat in his dark office, staring at a document folder with her name on it. Evidence, numbers, signatures, all pointing to her, yet something didn't add up. The transaction dates, the approval chains, they didn't match her schedule. It was too clean. Too deliberate. He called the audit head. "Cross-check the metadata. I want to know from which terminal those approvals were made." Hours later, a nervous voice replied, "Sir?" "They were made from your ex-CFO's system." But he used multiple staff IDs to mask it. Daniel froze. The ex-CFO. The same man who had been dismissed quietly before Daniel's arrival. The same one tied to his late wife's financial scandal. Rage surged through him, mixing with guilt. He had doubted the one person who'd shown him kindness when the world hadn't. Just then, his phone rang again, but this time, it was Lily's school. "Mr. Hayes," said the teacher's panicked voice. "Lily hasn't been picked up. The driver never showed. We can't reach your office." Daniel's blood ran cold. "What do you mean she hasn't been picked up?" "I'm sorry, sir, but—" He didn't let her finish. He grabbed his keys and bolted from the office, heart pounding. The city lights blurred as he sped through traffic. When he reached the school, the gates were empty. The security guard ran toward him. "Sir, a man came earlier with your driver's badge. Said he was sent by you." Daniel's stomach dropped. The ex-CFO. It had to be, and then a text flashed on his phone. "No name, just a message. You took everything from me. Let's see how it feels to lose what you love." Daniel's world tilted. He clenched his phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Lily," he whispered, his voice cracking. There was only one person he could turn to, the one he'd pushed away. He dialed Elena. When she answered, her voice was small, broken. "What do you want, Daniel?" He swallowed hard. "I need your help. They've taken Lily." To be continued in Part 7, where truths collide, redemption burns bright, and love finds its way through the storm. For a moment, Elena couldn't breathe. His voice, tight, raw with fear, didn't sound like the cold CEO she'd come to despise. It was the same desperate man from that rainy night begging silently for help. "Daniel." "Slow down," she said, clutching her phone. "What happened?" "They took Lily," he rasped. "My ex-CFO, the one behind the fraud, he's back. He forged your name, used my daughter to get revenge. I don't know where she is." Elena's pulse quickened. "Send me everything you have." Every message, every clue. Minutes later, her inbox flooded with screenshots, license plates, and coordinates pulled from Lily's smartwatch signal. The trail ended near the old harbor district, abandoned warehouses by the docks. Without hesitation, she grabbed her keys and ran. Rain had started again, soft at first, then furious. The night mirrored the one that had first brought them together, as if fate had come full circle. Daniel was already there when she arrived, standing in the downpour. Drenched and shaking, not from the cold, but from dread. He turned, and when he saw her, the hardened facade cracked completely. "I didn't think you'd come," he said, voice trembling. She met his gaze. "You doubted me once. Don't make that mistake again." They moved together, combing through the maze of dark corridors and echoing metal. A faint sound, Lily's muffled sob, guided them to a rusted door secured with a heavy chain. Daniel's hands fumbled with the lock, desperation growing with every second. "Step back," Elena said. She grabbed a metal rod and struck hard, once, twice, until the chain snapped. They burst through. Lily sat tied to a chair, tear-streaked but unharmed. The moment she saw her father, she cried, "Daddy!" Daniel dropped to his knees, pulling her close, his body shaking with relief. "I'm here, baby. I'm here." Elena watched quietly, her chest tight with emotion. It was raw, imperfect, beautiful, a man stripped of all pretense, clutching the only thing that mattered. But the sound of footsteps echoed behind them. From the shadows stepped the ex-CFO, his face twisted with bitterness. "You took everything from me, Daniel. The position, the company, the life I built." Daniel shielded Lily behind him. "You built it on lies," he said coldly. The man's eyes darted to Elena. "And you, his little savior. The perfect employee. You think he cares about you? He'll throw you away just like he did me." Elena met his glare steadily. "The difference is, I never needed his power to do what's right." He lunged forward, but Daniel tackled him to the ground. The struggle was brief, fueled by rage and adrenaline, until security sirens blared in the distance. The police stormed in moments later, taking the man into custody. When it was over, Daniel stood under the rain, holding Lily with one arm and looking at Elena through tear-soaked eyes. "I was wrong about you," he whispered. "About everything." Elena shook her head gently. "You weren't wrong. You were scared." "We both were." He took a slow step toward her. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "Maybe not," she said softly, "but you still have a chance to earn it." He nodded, humbled. "Then I'll spend every day trying." The morning dawned pale and quiet, the storm finally breaking. In the days that followed, the truth came out. The ex-CFO had forged documents, siphoning funds through false accounts. Elena's name was cleared publicly, and Daniel reinstated her personally, calling her the heart Lyra Designs needed. Yet for both of them, it wasn't just redemption, it was rebirth. One afternoon, as they stood by the office terrace overlooking the city, Daniel smiled faintly. "Funny how everything started with a storm." Elena smiled back. "And a knock at the door." He glanced at her, eyes softer than they'd ever been. "You know, Lily keeps asking when she can visit her favorite person again." Elena laughed. "She means me, right?" He grinned. "I hope so, but I wouldn't mind being second." The wind carried their laughter out across the skyline. Two souls once broken, now bound by something deeper than circumstance. Because sometimes fate doesn't shout. It whispers in rainstorms, knocks softly at your door, and waits for you to answer. Moral: one act of kindness can rewrite an entire life, yours and someone else's. The end.